Why did he help us? When everyone else just walked away, her voice was so soft it almost dissolved into the cold midnight air of the cemetery. A little girl stood there, wearing a worn-out dress, her hands clenched, tightly, as if letting go would mean losing the last thing she had left in this world. And then, a man stepped forward. No one in this city didn't know who he was. A name that made people fall silent. A single glance that could make others bow their heads. But at this moment, he froze. Because the question of a child was the one thing in this world he couldn't answer. The little girl had no idea who she was speaking to. She didn't know that the man standing in front of her was the father of the one who saved her family. And she had no idea that, in just a few minutes, a truth would be revealed that would shatter everything he had believed his entire life. But the question is, when a monster wants to do the right thing for the first time, is it already too late? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to. Show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change us. Life. The wind cut through the narrow paths of St. Michael's Cemetery on the south side of Chicago, like a blade carrying the sharp scent of early October frost and decaying leaves. It was October 15th, 2025, a gray Sunday afternoon, when the sky seemed pressed low against the city, heavy with the promise of rain that never quite fell. Vincent Moretti walked the familiar gravel lane with the same deliberate stride he had used every Sunday for the past 6 years, his black overcoat buttoned against the chill, the collar turned up to shield his neck. At 58, his once dark hair had silvered at the temples and along the sides, framing a face carved by time and harder things, deep lines around the eyes, a jaw set in permanent resolve. His skin was fair, the kind that belonged to generations of Italian-American families who had settled in these neighborhoods long before the towers rose downtown, but the years had leached any warmth from it. He carried no flowers today. He never did anymore. The first year after Anthony's death, he had brought roses, red ones, because his son had once joked that red was the color of bad decisions and good intentions. After that, the gesture felt hollow. What use were petals against a slab of polished granite? The headstone stood modest, but elegant among rows of similar markers. Anthony Moretti, beloved son, born March 3, 1996, taken April 21, 2000, 19, 33 years old. A single bullet in a warehouse shootout on the west side, courtesy of a rival crew that had never fully paid for it. Vincent had made sure the men responsible disappeared quietly one by one over the following months. Justice in his world was not loud, but it had not brought his boy back. He stopped a few paces away, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the name etched in stone. The guilt was always there, a low, constant burn beneath his ribs like a furnace that had never cooled. He had built an empire from the ground up, construction companies that bid on city contracts, restaurants with linen tablecloths, and valet parking underground networks that moved money and favors with surgical precision. Billions funneled through legitimate fronts, power that could shift entire neighborhoods with a single phone call. Yet every Sunday he stood here feeling small, powerless, the same helpless father who had once cradled a feverish toddler through the night and promised the stars he would keep him safe. The remorse gnawed deeper on days like this. Anthony had wanted out. Not the flashy rebellion of youth, but a quiet insistence in his late 20s, talks about community college, starting a small auto repair shop, maybe even leaving the city. Vincent had laughed it off at first, called it a phase. Then came the arguments, the silences that stretched longer each time. The night Anthony died, they had fought over the phone. Vincent's last words to his son had been sharp, impatient. "Grow up, Tony. This is the life we have." He had replayed those words every day since, each repetition carving the guilt a little sharper. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath cloud in the cold air. The cemetery was quiet except for the distant rumble of traffic on Lakeshore Drive and the occasional rustle of leaves skittering across the path. He let the silence settle over him, heavy as a coat of lead. This was his penance to come here alone, to feel the full weight of what he had lost, to remind himself that all the power in the world could not rewrite one rainy April evening. Then he saw her. She was small, no more than 9 or 10, kneeling on the damp grass at the base of Anthony's headstone. Her thin frame was swallowed by an oversized gray hoodie that had once been navy, but had faded to something closer to ash. The hood was up, shadowing her face, but strands of dark hair escaped and lifted in the wind. She wore mismatched sneakers, one lace missing, and her jeans were patched at the knees with duct tape. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her knuckles, white as if holding herself together by force of will alone. Vincent froze. No one came to this grave except him. Anthony had no other family left, no siblings, no living grandparents. The few cousins who remained kept their distance after the funeral. Yet here was a child alone speaking in a soft, trembling voice that carried just enough for him to hear. "Thank you for saving my little brother," she whispered. "Thank you for giving him a chance to keep breathing. Mama says you're watching over us now. Please, keep watching. We need it so bad." The word struck Vincent like a fist to the sternum. His pulse surged loud in his ears. Saving her brother. What could Anthony possibly have done for this girl? He took a single step forward, gravel crunching under his polished shoe. The sound was too loud in the stillness. The girl startled, whipping her head around. Her face was pale, almost translucent under the gray sky, cheeks hollowed by hunger, eyes wide and dark, ringed with exhaustion. Sleep-deprived shadows bruised the skin beneath them. She looked malnourished, the kind of thin that came from too many skipped meals, from nights spent curled under thin blankets while the wind howled through cracked windows. Yet there was something fierce in her gaze, a guarded wariness mixed with raw curiosity. She scrambled to her feet, backing up a step, clutching the hem of her hoodie like a shield. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, voice small and polite the way children speak when addressing someone they sense holds power over them. "I didn't mean to bother anybody. I'll go." Vincent raised a hand, palm out, slow, careful, the gesture he used when calming a spooked horse or a nervous associate. "You don't have to go anywhere," he said, keeping his tone low, steady. "I'm just visiting my son, Anthony. This is his grave." The girl's eyes widened further. Recognition flickered there, then confusion, then something close to shock. She glanced at the headstone, then back at Vincent, lips parting as if to speak, but producing no sound. Her small body swayed slightly as though the ground had tilted beneath her. Vincent felt his own chest tighten. He had seen fear before, plenty of it, but this was different. This was the fear of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. He took another step, slower still. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, glancing toward the cemetery gates, as if calculating escape routes. Then in a whisper barely audible over the wind, "Lily." "Lily," he repeated, tasting the name. Something inside him shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible but undeniable. A crack in the armor he had worn for years. "And who were you thanking, Lily, my son?" "Anthony," she nodded once, eyes filling with sudden tears that she blinked back fiercely. He gave my brother his liver. When Mateo was gonna die, the doctors said it was a miracle match. Mama told me the story so many times. The man who saved him, he was brave. He chose to help even when he couldn't anymore." Vincent's world narrowed to a pinpoint. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against his skin. Anthony had been an organ donor. Vincent had signed the papers in the hospital corridor, numb with grief, barely registering the nurse's gentle explanation. He had never asked who received the organs. The knowledge had felt too dangerous, too intimate, like opening a wound that might never close. Now the wound tore open anyway. He staggered back one step, hand, reaching instinctively for the headstone to steady himself. The cold granite bit into his palm. Lily watched him, fear mingling with concern on her thin face. She took a hesitant step forward. "Are you okay, mister?" Her voice was timid, polite, but threaded with genuine worry. "You look white." Vincent could not answer immediately. The guilt that had simmered for 6 years roared to life, mixed now with something new, something fierce and protective and utterly unexpected. This child, this fragile girl who knelt at his son's grave to give thanks, carried a piece of Anthony inside her brother. A life extended. A second chance paid for with his boy's final breath. And in that moment, staring into Lily's wide, haunted eyes, Vincent felt the first stirrings of something he had not allowed himself in years. Love. Not romantic, not possessive, but the deep, consuming love of a father who had lost his child, and now impossibly found another standing before him, small and starving and impossibly brave. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to remain even. "I'm okay, Lily. I'm more than okay." But inside, the conflict raged. The man who ruled Chicago's shadows with iron certainty now felt unmoored. How could he walk away from this? How could he not? The empire he had built demanded ruthlessness. The father he had failed demanded something else entirely. Behind him, tires crunched on the cemetery access road, a black SUV pulling up slowly, windows tinted. His driver waiting. Vincent glanced back once, then returned his gaze to the girl. "Come on," he said quietly. "It's getting cold. Let me get you something warm to drink. And tell me about your brother." Lily hesitated, suspicion flickering across her features. She had learned early that kindness from strangers often came with strings. But the wind gusted again, whipping through her thin hoodie, and she shivered violently. "Okay," she whispered. "But just for a minute." Vincent nodded, heart pounding with a violence he had not felt since the night Anthony died. He offered his hand not to take hers, but to gesture toward the path. She did not take it. Not yet. As they walked toward the gates side by side, but separated by worlds, Vincent felt the old darkness shift inside him. Something new was rising, fierce, protective, terrifying in its intensity. He would protect this child, whatever the cost, even if it meant tearing his own empire apart to do it. The black SUV idled at the cemetery gates with the quiet authority of something that knew it belonged wherever it stopped. The engine purred low, almost inaudible beneath the wind that still sliced across the headstones. Vincent Moretti opened the rear door himself before the driver could step out, holding it ajar with one hand while he gestured for Lily to climb in. She hesitated on the gravel, small sneakers planted as if the vehicle itself might swallow her whole. "It's warm inside," he said, voice gentle but carrying the weight of command he could never quite strip away. "And there's hot chocolate. Real kind, not the powder stuff." Lily's eyes flicked from the open door to Vincent's face, searching for the trap she had learned to expect from the world. Her thin fingers twisted the frayed cuff of her hoodie. The garment had once been someone else's, probably several someone's, and now it hung on her like a flag of surrender. She was so slight that the wind seemed capable of lifting her away entirely. After a long beat, she nodded once a tiny motion and slipped past him into the leather seat. The door closed with a soft, expensive thud. Vincent circled to the other side and slid in beside her, leaving a careful distance between them. The driver, a broad-shouldered man named Carlo, who had been with Vincent since Anthony was in grade school, glanced in the rearview mirror, eyebrows lifting in silent question. Vincent gave the slightest shake of his head, no questions, not now. "Drive," he said quietly. "Somewhere quiet. A diner, maybe. One that's open on Sundays." Carlo pulled away smoothly. The cemetery shrank in the tinted windows until it was only a memory of gray stone and fallen leaves. Inside the SUV, the heat wrapped around Lily like a blanket she did not trust. She sat rigid, knees pressed together, hands folded in her lap as though she were in church waiting for judgment. The leather seat was so soft it felt wrong against her bony frame. She kept stealing glances at Vincent, at the heavy gold watch on his wrist, the crisp white shirt beneath the overcoat, the faint scent of expensive aftershave that smelled like cedar and money. Everything about him screamed distance from the life she knew. Vincent felt her scrutiny like pinpricks. He kept his gaze forward, giving her space to breathe, but inside his chest the storm was building again. This child, this fragile, starving child, had knelt at Anthony's grave and spoken gratitude where Vincent had only ever spoken regret. The realization kept striking him in fresh waves, Anthony's liver beating inside her little brother. A piece of his boy still alive, still fighting, still giving warmth to someone else's family. The thought should have brought peace. Instead, it brought fresh guilt, sharper than before, because Vincent had never known, never asked, never honored the gift in any way, except silence. He risked a sideways look. Lily was staring out the window at the passing south side streets, boarded storefronts, chain-link fences topped with razor wire graffiti that had been painted over so many times the colors bled together into gray. Her reflection in the glass looked ghostly eyes, enormous in a face too small. "How old are you, Lily?" he asked. 9, she answered softly, almost apologetically. "Almost 10. My birthday's in December. 9. Anthony had been 9 the year his mother died. Vincent remembered the way his son had tried to be brave at the funeral, chin trembling, small hand gripping Vincent so hard it hurt. The memory stabbed now fresh and vicious. "And your brother Matteo, he's 7. He just turned 7 last month." Her voice cracked on the last word. She swallowed, then added in that same timid politeness, He's doing okay now. Because of your son. The doctor said he might not make it to Christmas that year. But then the call came. Vincent closed his eyes for one heartbeat, fighting the tide rising in his throat. When he opened them again, the city blurred past pawn shops with signs promising quick cash, a corner store with bars on the windows, a woman pushing a shopping cart full of cans down the sidewalk in the cold. The SUV turned onto a quieter street and pulled up outside a small diner called Rosie's Place. Neon sign, flickering in the early dusk. Carlo parked directly in front, engine still running. Vincent turned to Lily. "You hungry?" She looked at him with sudden naked hunger, not just for food, but for the possibility that someone might actually mean the question. Then suspicion flooded back. "I don't have any money. You don't need any." He stepped out, first came around and opened her door. She slid down carefully, sneakers hitting pavement, and stood close to him without touching. The wind tugged at her hoodie again, revealing how thin her wrists were, how sharply her collarbones stood out beneath the fabric. Inside Rosie's, the air smelled of coffee and frying onions. A handful of regulars sat at the counter. A waitress in her 50s looked up from wiping tables, and smiled at Vincent with the easy recognition of someone who had served him for years without ever asking questions. "Booth in the back," she asked. Vincent nodded. He guided Lily to the farthest corner away from the windows. She slid in first, then he sat opposite, folding his coat beside him. The vinyl seat creaked under his weight. The waitress brought menus and 2 glasses of water. Lily stared at the menu as though it were written in another language. Her fingers trembled slightly against the laminated edge. "Order anything," Vincent said. "Pancakes, burger, whatever you want." She bit her lip. Can I get something for Mateo too?" To take home, Vincent's heart lurched. "Of course. We'll get enough for both of you. And your mama." Lily's eyes filled again. She blinked hard. "Mama's working double shift tonight. She won't be home till after midnight. She always says we're okay, but—" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "We're not always okay." Vincent felt something crack inside him, something that had been holding back the full force of his remorse for years. He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me what not okay looks like." She hesitated, then spoke so softly he had to strain to hear. "The heat's been off since last winter. Mama keeps saying she'll pay the bill next paycheck, but there's never enough after rent and Mateo's medicine. Sometimes we sleep in our coats. The wind comes through the windows like knives. I try to cover the cracks with cardboard, but it doesn't help much." Vincent listened, each word landing like a stone in still water, sending ripples of rage and shame through him. He had spent decades making sure no one in his circle ever wanted for anything private schools, for the children of his capos, doctors on call houses with heated floors. And here was this child, Anthony's unintended legacy, shivering through Chicago winters while he sat in a penthouse overlooking the lake. The waitress returned. Lily ordered chicken fingers, French fries, and a chocolate milkshake, and in a rush of courage added a grilled cheese and tomato soup to go for Mateo. Vincent ordered coffee black, though he had no intention of drinking it. While they waited, Lily's gaze kept drifting to the street outside. A group of young men in dark jackets lingered near a parked sedan 2 blocks down, too still, too watchful. Vincent noticed them the same moment she did. Her body tensed. "They're from the block over," she whispered. "They hassle Mama sometimes. Ask for protection money. She says no, but they keep coming back." Vincent's jaw tightened. He knew the type. Small-time crews trying to carve out territory. Not his people, but close enough to be a problem. The food arrived. Lily stared at the plate as though it might vanish. She picked up a chicken finger with careful fingers, took one bite, then another, slow at first, then faster, as though afraid someone would snatch it away. Ketchup smeared on her chin. She wiped it with her sleeve, embarrassed. Vincent watched her eat, and felt the love surge again. Fierce, protective, almost painful. This was not pity. This was recognition. He saw Anthony in the stubborn set of her jaw and the way she tried to hide how hungry she was. He saw the future Anthony might have had if one night had gone differently. Outside, the young men moved closer. One of them lit a cigarette eyes on the diner windows. Vincent's phone buzzed once in his pocket, a text from Carlo 3 outside. "Armed. Want me to handle?" Vincent typed back with one thumb. "Not yet. Watch." Lily finished the chicken fingers and started on the fries. She looked up, eyes shining. "This is the best food I've had in forever." "Thank you, mister." "Vincent," he corrected gently. "Call me Vincent." She tested the name silently, lips moving. Then in that same soft, polite voice, "Thank you, Vincent." The word hit him harder than any bullet ever had. The door chime rang. 2 of the young men stepped inside, casual but eyes scanning. The third stayed on the sidewalk, hand inside his jacket. They moved toward the counter voices, low ordering nothing. Vincent met their leader's gaze across the room. Recognition passed between them, mutual cold. The man smirked, then jerked his head toward the door. His companions followed him back outside. Vincent exhaled slowly. He would deal with them later. Not here. Not in front of her. Lily had gone, still watching the exchange. "They're gonna come back," she said quietly. "They always do." "Not tonight," Vincent answered, and the promise in his voice was iron. She looked at him then, really looked, and something shifted in her eyes. Suspicion gave way to a fragile, burning curiosity, then deeper still to the first faint spark of trust. Vincent felt it echo in his own chest, the violent collision of guilt and hope, remorse and sudden overwhelming purpose. This child, thin, cold, brave beyond reason, was his second chance. Not to replace Anthony, never that, but to protect what Anthony had saved, to be the father he had failed to be the first time. He reached across the table, slowly palm up. Not demanding. Offering. Lily stared at his hand for a long moment, then trembling, she placed her small, icy fingers in his. The contact was electric. Her trust, tentative, fierce, absolute, burned through him like sunlight through cracked stone. Outside, the wind howled louder. Inside, in the quiet booth of Rosie's place, something unbreakable began to form. Vincent squeezed her hand once gently. "I've got you now," he whispered. And in his heart the darkness fractured just a little more. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like distant insects casting a pale, unsteady glow across the Formica tabletop. Lily had finished the last of the fries and was cradling the chocolate milkshake between both hands, as though it were something fragile and holy. The condensation on the glass dripped onto her fingers. She did not wipe it away. Vincent watched her in silence, every small movement she made etching itself deeper into the raw place inside him. Outside, the three young men had not left. They stood under the street lamp 2 doors down, cigarettes glowing like tiny orange signals in the gathering dusk of October 15th, 2025. Carlo had texted again, still watching. "One's on the phone. Looks like they're calling backup." Vincent had replied with a single word, "Wait." He turned his attention back to the girl. Her cheeks had flushed slightly from the warmth and the food, but the shadows under her eyes remained deep, bruised purple against skin stretched too tight over bone. She looked up suddenly, catching him staring. "You're really his dad?" she asked. The question came out small, almost reverent. Anthony's dad, Vincent, nodded once. The motion felt heavy, as though his neck carried the weight of every missed chance. "Yes." Lily's gaze dropped to the table. She traced a finger through the ring of water left by her glass. "Mama says the donor was a good man, that he had to be good to choose that. To give even when—" She trailed off, swallowing. "Even when he was gone." Vincent felt the words land like stones in his chest. Good man. He had spent a lifetime convincing himself he was not that. The empire he commanded had been built on favors, collected with quiet threats, on debts enforced with cold precision, on nights when men vanished because they had crossed the wrong line. Yet here was this child speaking of his son, his boy, as though Anthony had been a saint, and by extension perhaps Vincent carried some echo of that grace. The guilt twisted harder, violent now, a knife turning slowly. He had signed the donor papers in a hospital hallway that smelled of bleach and grief, his hand shaking so badly the nurse had steadied it. He had not asked questions. He had not wanted to know who lived, because Anthony died. Knowing would have made the loss real in a way he could not survive. Now the truth sat across from him in a faded hoodie, sipping chocolate milkshake, and thanking the dead with every breath her brother took. He cleared his throat. "Tell me about Matteo." Lily's face brightened, then dimmed again almost instantly, as though joy were a luxury she could not afford to hold for long. "He's little. Smaller than me, even though he's only 2 years younger. He likes drawing cars, race cars with flames on the sides. He says when he grows up he's going to drive one so fast nobody can catch him." She paused, voice dropping. "He used to say that before the hospital. After, he doesn't talk about it as much. He gets tired easy. The medicine helps, but Mama says we have to be careful." Vincent listened, each detail carving fresh grooves in his heart. A 7-year-old boy who liked fast cars. Anthony had loved cars too, had spent hours in the garage with Vincent, as a teenager, wrench in hand, grease on his cheeks, laughing about building something that could outrun anything. The parallel struck Vincent like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles whitened. Lily watched him. "Are you mad?" "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "Not at you. Never at you." She nodded, slowly uncertain. Then in that soft, timid voice that seemed to cost her something every time she used it, "Can I ask you something, anything? Why didn't you ever come look for us?" Mama said the donor family can ask to meet if they want. But nobody did. The question hung between them, simple and devastating. Vincent felt the air leave his lungs. He had no answer. That would not sound like an excuse. "Because I was afraid. Because knowing would have broken me completely. Because I did not deserve to know. I didn't think I could face it," he admitted at last. The words tasted like ash. "I thought if I knew who he saved it would make losing him hurt more. Like seeing proof he was really gone." Lily's eyes filled again. This time she did not blink the tears away. One slipped down her cheek and fell onto the table. "It hurts anyway," she whispered. "But knowing he helped someone, it makes the hurt have a reason. Mama says that's what matters. That his heart kept beating somewhere. Even if it wasn't his heart, it was his choice." Vincent felt something inside him rupture quietly, irrevocably. The remorse that had simmered for 6 years boiled over into something hotter, more consuming shame. He had let Anthony go without a fight that last night on the phone. He had built walls of power and money to keep the pain at bay. And all the while, a piece of his son had been keeping a little boy alive in a freezing apartment on the south side. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet, thick black leather monogrammed in gold. He slid several bills across the table toward the to-go bag the waitress had packed for Matteo. "This is for you and your brother. And your mama. Whatever you need." Lily stared at the money. Her hand hovered, then drew back as though it might burn her. "We can't take that." You already took something bigger, Vincent said quietly. Anthony gave without asking for anything back. Let me do the same. Tears spilled freely now. She swiped at them with her sleeve, embarrassed. Mama's gonna cry when she sees this. She tries not to, but she does anyway. Late at night, when she thinks we're asleep. Vincent's throat closed. He pictured it, a tired woman counting pennies at a kitchen table, scarred by years of worry, shoulders shaking in the dark. The image fused with every memory of his own mother counting change after his father walked out, and the rage that had driven him to build something unbreakable rose again, only this time it had a different target. Not rivals, not the city, the unfairness itself, the way the world let children shiver while men like him sat in heated cars worth more than most people's homes. Outside, the 3 young men had been joined by 2 more. They crossed the street now, bold heading straight for the diner. Carlo stepped out of the SUV, coat open just enough to show the outline of the holster beneath. Vincent stood. Stay here, he told Lily. Don't move. She grabbed his sleeve, small fingers surprisingly strong. Don't go out there. They're mean. They hurt people. Vincent looked down at her hand on his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, trust fragile and burning, offered without reservation. He covered her hand with his own for one brief second. I'll be right back, he promised. He stepped outside into the cold. The wind whipped his coat open. The 5 men stopped 10 feet away, spreading out in a loose semicircle. The leader, early 20s tattoo creeping up his neck, smiled with teeth that were too white against the dusk. Moretti, he said, didn't expect to see you slumming it down here. Vincent did not smile back. You're on the wrong block. The man laughed short and sharp. This ain't your territory anymore, old man. Times change. Vincent stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Not tonight, they don't. Behind him, through the diner window, he could see Lily watching, face pale, hands pressed to the glass. The sight ignited something primal in him. Not anger. Protection. The kind he had failed to give Anthony. The kind he would die giving now. The leader's smile faltered. He glanced at his crew, then back at Vincent. You really want to do this over a kid? Vincent's voice dropped low, lethal in its calm. You touch her, you touch what's mine. And I don't forgive easy. Silence stretched taut as wire. One of the men shifted his weight, hand twitching toward his waistband. Carlo moved forward a single step, enough to remind them he was there. The leader raised both hands, palms out. Fine. We're gone. But his eyes promised return. They backed away, melting into the shadows of the side street. Vincent watched until they disappeared around the corner. Only then did he exhale. He returned to the booth. Lily had not moved. Her eyes were huge, terrified, but when he sat down, she lunged across the table and wrapped her arms around his neck in a sudden, desperate hug. Vincent froze for half a second, then his arms came around her, automatically careful cradling. She was so small, so cold despite the diner's heat. She smelled faintly of cheap soap and hunger. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder, for not letting them hurt us. Vincent closed his eyes. The love that had sparked in the cemetery now roared through him, fierce, consuming, paternal in its intensity. This child, Anthony's gift to the world, was his to protect now. No negotiation, no compromise. He held her a moment longer, then gently eased her back. Let's get you home, he said. To Matteo, to your mama. Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. For the first time that evening, she smiled, small, tentative, but real. As they walked out to the SUV, Vincent glanced back once at the diner window. Their reflections stared back, a powerful man in a tailored coat and a thin girl in a too-big hoodie, hand in hand. The disparity between them was stark, his world of heated leather and quiet power, hers of cracked windows and unpaid bills. Yet in that moment, the distance collapsed. She trusted him, and he, God help him, he loved her with a force that threatened to tear every wall he had ever built. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Behind them, the city lights flickered on, one by one, cold and indifferent. But inside the car, something warm had begun to burn, something that would not be extinguished. The SUV glided through the south side streets like a dark ship on troubled water headlights, cutting clean paths through the early evening gloom of October 15th, 2025. Lily sat beside Vincent in absolute stillness, the to-go bag clutched against her chest as though it contained something far more precious than food. Every few blocks, the vehicle passed. Another reminder of how thin the line was between survival and surrender. A family huddled under a bus shelter with cardboard signs. A man pushing a shopping cart piled high with plastic bags. Windows, glowing faintly behind bars and plywood. Lily stared at each one without blinking, as if cataloging them against some private ledger of endurance. Vincent watched her profile in the passing streetlight flashes. Her small jaw was set, lips pressed together in that way children do when they are trying not to cry. The love that had ignited in the diner now burned steadily, a quiet furnace in his chest. It terrified him. He had spent decades mastering control over men, over money, over fear, and here was a 9-year-old girl unraveling him with nothing more than silence and trust. Carlo turned onto a narrow side street lined with 3-story walk-ups, paint peeling in long strips, fire escapes rusted into permanent surrender. He slowed in front of a building whose front door hung slightly askew on one hinge. A single bulb flickered above the entrance, throwing jagged shadows across cracked concrete steps. "This is it," Lily said softly. Her voice held no apology, only fact. Vincent felt a fresh wave of shame crash through him. He had driven past buildings like this thousands of times, seen them, dismissed them, profited indirectly from the desperation they housed. Now one of them held the living proof of his son's final generosity. Lily reached for the door handle. Vincent stopped her with a gentle touch on her arm. "Let me walk you up," he said. She looked at him wide-eyed, searching, then nodded. They stepped out into the wind. It hit like a slap, carrying the smell of exhaust and damp brick. Lily led the way up the uneven steps, sneakers scuffing against concrete, worn smooth by generations of weary feet. The hallway inside smelled of boiled cabbage and mildew. A single bulb dangled from a frayed cord, swinging gently. Mailboxes hung open, some missing doors entirely. 3rd floor. Apartment 3B. Lily paused at the door, key in hand, hesitating as though crossing this threshold would change everything. She turned the lock. The door creaked open into dimness, lit only by a small lamp on an end table. The living room was tiny, worn couch, sagging in the middle coffee table, scarred with crayon marks, a single window covered by a bedsheet tacked up as a curtain. A radiator hissed weakly in the corner, fighting a losing battle against the cold seeping through the walls. "Matteo," Lily called softly. A small figure appeared in the doorway to what must have been the bedroom. 7 years old, thin as his sister, dark hair tousled from sleep or restless waiting. He wore mismatched pajamas, top too big, bottoms rolled at the cuffs, and clutched a stuffed race car to his chest. His eyes, enormous and watchful, fixed first on Lily, then on the tall man behind her. Lily set the to-go bag on the table. "I brought food, grilled cheese and soup, and this is Vincent. He's Anthony's dad." Matteo's face lit with sudden, fragile wonder. The liverman's dad, Vincent, knelt slowly to the boy's level knees, protesting against the worn carpet. "Yes," he said. "That's me." Matteo studied him for a long moment. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and placed one small hand over his own side, just below the ribs. "It's still beating," he whispered. "Every day. I can feel it sometimes. Like it's saying thank you." Vincent's vision blurred. He reached out instinctively, then stopped himself, afraid to touch something so precious. The boy's simple declaration tore through him, Anthony's organ alive, speaking gratitude through a child's heartbeat. The remorse that had been building all evening now reached a violent crescendo, a storm inside his ribs that threatened to crack them open. The front door opened wider. A woman stepped in coat, still on scarf loose around her neck. Mid-30s, exhausted, beautiful in the way that comes from refusing to break. Maria. Her dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, strands escaping like they had given up trying to stay contained. She carried a small paper bag, probably dinner for the kids scavenged from the diner's leftovers. She froze when she saw Vincent kneeling on her floor. "Lily," her voice was soft, careful, threaded with the same guarded politeness her daughter used. "Who is this?" Lily moved to her mother's side. "Mama, this is Vincent, Anthony's father. He bought us food, and he stopped some guys from bothering us at the diner." Maria's gaze flicked from her daughter to Vincent, then to Matteo, who had edged closer to his sister. Recognition dawned slowly, first confusion, then shock, then a deep, weary understanding. She set the paper bag down with trembling hands. "You're him," she said quietly. "Not a question." Vincent rose. "I am." Maria looked around her own apartment as though seeing it for the first time. Through his eyes, the peeling wallpaper, the single lamp fighting, the dark, the faint draft that made the bedsheet curtain ripple. Shame flickered across her face, quick and sharp, then vanished behind quiet dignity. "Please," she said. "Sit. If you can find a place." Vincent took the armchair springs, groaning under his weight. Maria moved to the couch, pulling both children close. Matteo climbed into her lap. Lily sat beside her small hand, finding her mother's. Silence settled thick and heavy. Maria spoke first. "I looked for you. After the transplant. Not to ask for anything, just to say thank you. The hospital said the family didn't want contact. I respected it. But I never stopped wondering." Vincent nodded. Words felt inadequate. "I didn't know how to face it. I thought knowing would make the hole bigger." "It doesn't," Maria said gently. "It fills part of it. Every time Matteo laughs, every time he runs, even if he tires fast, I remember someone chose to give him that chance." Vincent's hands clenched on his knees. The love for Lily, already fierce now, extended to this woman and her son, quiet, protective, paternal in its depth. He wanted to shield them from the cold, from the men on the corner, from the unfairness that had let them suffer while he accumulated more than any man needed. Outside, tires squealed faintly, too close, too deliberate. Carlo's voice came through the cracked window, low and warning boss. Company. Vincent stood. Through the bedsheet curtain, he saw 2 cars idling across the street, same crew from the diner, bolder now, doors opening. Maria tensed. They've been coming around more, saying the building needs new management. I told them no. They don't like no. Vincent moved to the window. One of the men below looked up, saw him silhouetted, and smirked. He turned back to Maria. They won't bother you again tonight. She searched his face. You don't have to, I do, he said simply. He stepped into the hallway, closed the apartment door behind him, and descended the stairs. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling loose trash along the curb. The 5 men waited, spread out hands loose at their sides. Vincent stopped 10 feet away. You're persistent. The leader stepped forward. This block's changing hands, Moretti. Old rules don't apply. Vincent's voice stayed calm, almost conversational. The rules apply wherever I say they do. A second man laughed nervously. You're one guy. Vincent tilted his head toward the SUV. Carlo stepped out, then 2 more men, quiet professional, emerged from the shadows of the alley beside the building. The odds shifted in an instant. The leader's smirk faded. This ain't worth it. Vincent took 1 step closer. You're right. Walk away. Don't come back. Silence. Then grudgingly, the men backed toward their cars. Engines started. Taillights disappeared around the corner. Vincent returned upstairs. Maria had not moved. The children watched him with wide eyes. They're gone, he said. Maria exhaled shakily. Thank you. Vincent knelt again, this time in front of Lily. I'm not leaving you alone with this anymore. Lily's lower lip trembled. She looked at her mother, then back at him. You mean, like family? The word struck Vincent like lightning. Family. He had lost his once. Now it stood before him, small, cold, impossibly brave. Yes, he whispered. Like family. Maria's eyes filled. She did not speak, but her hand reached out and rested lightly on his shoulder, a gesture of trust so fragile it nearly undid him. In the quiet apartment, amid the hiss of the radiator and the distant city hum, Vincent felt the last of his old walls crumble. The remorse remained sharp and unrelenting, but now it had purpose. Protection. Responsibility. Healing. He looked at Lily, at the way she leaned into her mother, small hand still clutching the edge of Vincent's coat sleeve, and the love burned brighter than ever. Whatever came next, rival crews, old debts, the empire itself, he would face it. For them, for the peace of Anthony that still breathed in the boy across the room, for the family he had been given a second chance to save. The apartment fell into a hush after the men outside retreated, the kind of quiet that follows a storm when the air still vibrates with what might have been. Maria rose first, moving with the careful economy of someone who had long ago learned that every motion cost something. She switched on the small kitchen light, a single bare bulb that flickered twice before settling into a weak yellow glow. It revealed more than it hid: cracked linoleum curling at the edges, a refrigerator that hummed unevenly, a stack of past-due notices tucked behind a chipped ceramic jar on the counter. Vincent remained kneeling near the couch, one hand still lightly resting where Lily had gripped his coat sleeve moments earlier. The fabric of his overcoat wool so fine it felt like a second skin now carried the faint imprint of her small fingers. He could still feel the pressure of them, cool and trusting against his arm. Maria opened the to-go bag and began unpacking the food onto mismatched plates. Grilled cheese cut into triangles, tomato soup in a paper container, French fries gone slightly limp from the journey but still fragrant. Matteo watched with wide eyes, stomach growling audibly in the stillness. Lily hovered beside her mother, helping without being asked. Small hands steady, despite the tremor Vincent could see running through them. Sit, Maria said to Vincent, gesturing to the armchair again. Please, you've done enough standing for one night. He obeyed, lowering himself, carefully aware of how his presence filled the cramped space. The chair creaked again. The sound seemed louder here than in the diner. Maria handed plates to the children first, then offered one to Vincent. He shook his head. I'm not hungry, he said. You eat. She did not argue. She took the smallest portion for herself, half a sandwich, a few fries, and sat on the edge of the couch between her children. For several minutes there was only the soft clink of forks, the occasional slurp of soup, the rustle of napkins. Vincent watched them eat with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. He watched Matteo dip his grilled cheese into the soup and smile at the warmth of it. He watched Lily eat slowly, savoring each bite as though committing it to memory. He watched Maria try to hide the way her shoulders relaxed for the first time in what must have been months. When the plates were nearly clean, Maria set hers aside and looked directly at Vincent. "You said you're not leaving us alone with this anymore." Her voice was quiet, measured, but the question beneath it trembled. "What does that mean exactly?" Vincent exhaled slowly. The truth he had carried since the cemetery now pressed against the back of his teeth, demanding release. He had intended to wait weeks, maybe months, until trust had time to root deeper. But the night had moved too fast, the threats too close, the children too fragile. He met Maria's eyes. "There's something you need to know. Something I only learned tonight." Lily looked up sharply. Mateo paused mid-bite. Vincent turned to the girl. "Lily, you're my daughter." The words landed like stones, dropped into deep water. Ripples spread outward, first silence, then a sharp intake of breath from Maria, then Lily's small body going rigid. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. Recognition, long buried, surged to the surface. Tears welled instantly, spilling over before she could stop them. "You knew," Vincent asked, her voice rough. Maria shook her head. "I suspected. For years. But I couldn't be sure. And even if I had been, I wouldn't have come looking. Not with your life. Not with what it meant for her." Lily stared at Vincent's eyes, enormous pupils dilated in the dim light. "Your daughter." He nodded once. 10 years ago. A few months before you were born. I didn't know, Lily. I swear to you I didn't know." The girl's breathing grew shallow. She looked from Vincent to her mother, then back again. Confusion crashed over her features, followed by something deeper, shock so profound it left her swaying slightly on the couch. Maria reached for her, but Lily pulled away, instinctively wrapping her arms around herself. I don't understand," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "You're my dad." Vincent felt his heart tear slowly, deliberately, as though someone had taken a blade and drawn it across every fiber. He had failed her before she was even born. Failed to know her. Failed to protect her through 9 winters of cold apartments and empty cabinets, and nights when the wind howled like accusation through the windows. "I am," he said. The admission cost him. "And I'm so sorry I wasn't here." Lily's lower lip trembled violently. Tears spilled hot and fast. She looked down at her hands, small chapped nails bitten short, and then up at him again. "Why didn't you come?" The question was simple, childlike, and it destroyed him. "Because I didn't know," he repeated, softer. "And because I built a life that kept people away, to keep them safe. To keep myself from hurting anyone else the way I hurt Anthony's mother, the way I hurt him." Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I left because I was scared," she said to Lily. "Scared of what his world might do to you. I thought you'd be safer without him knowing." Lily looked between them, small chest, rising and falling too quickly. "But now he knows. And he's here." Vincent reached out slowly, palm up, the same gesture he had used in the diner. "I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." Lily stared at his hand. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, with a small broken sound, she lunged forward and buried her face against his chest. Her thin arms wrapped around his neck with desperate strength. Vincent enfolded her carefully, one large hand cradling the back of her head, the other steady against her back. She was shaking, cold fear relief, all of it pouring out in silent sobs. Maria watched, tears streaming unchecked. Mateo climbed into her lap and pressed his face against her shoulder, small fingers clutching her shirt. Vincent held Lily as though she were made of glass. The love that had been burning since the cemetery now roared through every vein, fierce, paternal, absolute. He felt the disparity between them more acutely than ever. His cashmere coat against her threadbare hoodie, his heated car waiting downstairs against the radiator that barely warmed the room, his power to summon men and money against her. Powerlessness to keep the lights on. The contrast was obscene. And yet here she was, trusting him, needing him. After long minutes, Lily pulled back just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed lashes clumped with tears. Do you want me?" The question nearly undid him completely. "More than anything in this world," he whispered. She searched his face, then nodded once, small, decisive. "Okay." Outside, the wind rattled the window frame again. Somewhere down the block, a car backfired, sharp, sudden. Vincent tensed instinctively. Maria did too. He looked toward the window. "They'll come back," he said quietly. Sooner or later. Maria's jaw tightened. They always do. Vincent stood still, holding Lily's hand. "Not anymore." He stepped to the door. "I need to make a call. Stay here." Downstairs, in the shadow of the building, Carlo waited with the 2 additional men. Vincent spoke low, concise instructions, extra eyes on the block, a discreet presence, no confrontations unless necessary. Then he returned upstairs. When he re-entered the apartment, the children were curled on the couch under a thin blanket. Maria sat beside them, stroking Lily's hair. Vincent knelt again. I have a house on the north side. Big, warm, safe. There's room for all of you. Tonight if you want, or tomorrow, whenever you're ready." Maria looked at her children, exhausted, thin, but no longer alone. Then at Vincent. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know," he answered. "I want to." Lily lifted her head. "Can Mateo come too?" And Mama Vincent smiled, small, genuine, the first real one in years. "Of course." Mateo yawned, then reached out and touched Vincent's sleeve. "Will there be hot chocolate, like at the diner?" Vincent's throat closed. "Every night if you want it." The boy smiled sleepily. "Okay," Maria exhaled shakily. "We'll pack a few things tonight. Leave in the morning, if that's all right." Vincent nodded. "It's more than all right." He stayed until the children fell asleep, Lily curled against her mother's side, Mateo tucked under the blanket with his stuffed car. Maria walked Vincent to the door. In the dim hallway, she stopped him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing them, for seeing us." Vincent looked at her, really looked, and felt another layer of remorse peel away, replaced by something steadier. Responsibility. Purpose. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping her safe until I could find her." Maria touched his arm briefly, light grateful, then stepped back. Vincent descended the stairs into the cold night. The wind still blew, but it no longer felt like accusation. It felt like promise. In the SUV, Carlo glanced at him in the rear view. Everything set, Vincent stared out at the darkened windows of the third-floor apartment. A faint light still glowed behind the bedsheet curtain. "Everything's just beginning," he said. And in his chest, where guilt had ruled for so long, something new took root, quiet, fierce healing. A father's love returned from the grave, burning bright enough to warm even the coldest rooms. The first light of dawn on October 16th, 2025, crept through the bedsheet curtain like a hesitant visitor, pale and uncertain. Vincent had spent the night in the armchair coat draped over his knees, eyes open most of the hours. Sleep had become a stranger years ago. Now it felt impossible with Lily and Mateo breathing softly on the couch across from him. Maria had insisted he take the bedroom, but he refused. He wanted to be close, close enough to hear if footsteps came up the stairs, close enough to shield them if the night turned ugly again. Maria rose before the children, moving quietly to the kitchen. She filled the kettle with water from the tap that sometimes ran brown, set it on the single working burner, and measured instant coffee into chipped mugs with careful scoops. When she turned and saw Vincent awake, she offered a small, tired smile. "You didn't have to stay," she whispered. "I wanted to," he answered, voice low, to keep from waking the kids. She nodded, understanding more than the words said. She brought him coffee, black steaming, and sat on the arm of the couch nearest him. For a long moment, they simply existed in the quiet, the radiator's faint hiss, the distant rumble of early traffic, the soft rise and fall of two small chests under one thin blanket. Then Lily stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding them for a heartbeat before memory rushed back. She sat up, blanket slipping from her shoulders, and looked straight at Vincent. "You're still here," she said, as though she had half expected him to vanish like a dream. "I told you I would be." She rubbed her eyes with small fists, then glanced around the apartment, the same peeling walls, the same cold seeping in. But this morning the room felt different. Safer. Because he was in it. Mateo woke next, yawning hugely, then scrambled to sit beside his sister. He looked at Vincent with sleepy curiosity. "Is today the day we go to the big house?" Vincent's heart clenched. "If that's what you want." Maria set her mug down. "We packed what we could last night. 2 bags. It's not much." "It's enough," Vincent said. They moved with quiet efficiency. Maria folded clothes into the duffel bags, faded shirts, mismatched socks, a few treasured books, Mateo's stuffed race car. Lily helped folding carefully, but her movements slowed whenever she passed the single window. She kept glancing outside as though waiting for the men from last night to reappear. Vincent noticed. "They won't come this morning," he said gently. "Not while I'm here." She nodded, but the worry lingered in her eyes. By 8 o'clock they were ready. Vincent carried both bags down the 3 flights of stairs without effort. Carlo waited at the curb, with the SUV engine running heat already on full. Another car, discreet dark, idled half a block away, with 2 of Vincent's men inside. Protection without fanfare. Maria locked the apartment door for the last time. She stood on the landing, a moment key in hand, staring at the scarred wood as though saying goodbye to more than a place. Then she slipped the key under the mat habit of a lifetime and followed her children down. In the SUV, Lily and Mateo pressed their faces to the windows as the south side fell away behind them. The city changed, block by block, boarded shops, giving way to cleaner streets, then to tree-lined avenues, then to the glittering lakefront towers. The contrast struck Vincent harder than ever, his world of glass and steel and quiet power against the one they had just left. The disparity felt criminal now. The house stood on a quiet street in Lincoln Park, 3 stories of red brick, tall windows, wrought iron fence. Not ostentatious, but solid. Secure. Warm light glowed behind heavy drapes even in daylight. Carlo pulled into the circular drive. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in her 50s, Ellen, the housekeeper Vincent had trusted for 15 years, stepped out, smiling softly. "Welcome," she said simply. Inside, the air smelled of fresh coffee and cinnamon. Hardwood floors gleamed under soft rugs. A fire crackled in the living room hearth. Matteo's eyes went wide at the sight of the Christmas tree already standing in the corner early, but Vincent had called ahead. Lights twinkled gently. Ornaments caught the flames like captured stars. Lily stopped dead in the foyer. She looked up at the high ceiling, then down at her worn sneakers on the polished floor. Her small body began to tremble. Vincent knelt beside her. "What is it?" she whispered. "It's too nice. We don't belong here." The words cut deeper than any blade. Vincent cupped her face gently. "You belong wherever I say you belong, and I say you belong here." Tears spilled. She threw her arms around his neck again, face buried in his shoulder. "I'm scared," she admitted in a tiny voice. "What if it goes away?" "It won't," he promised. The vow felt like iron in his chest. Maria watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around Matteo. Her eyes shone with gratitude and something close to fear, the fear of too much kindness after too little. Ellen showed them to rooms upstairs. Lily's had pale blue walls, a window seat overlooking the garden, a bed piled with soft blankets. Matteo's was next door with race car posters already hung. Maria's room was quiet, elegant, with its own small sitting area. They spent the morning settling in. Matteo ran from room to room, laughing for the first time Vincent could remember hearing. Lily stayed closer, trailing Vincent like a shadow. When he sat in the study to make calls, quiet arrangements for security, for medical checkups, for school transfers, she curled in the leather armchair nearby, watching him. By afternoon, the threats returned. Vincent's phone buzzed with a message from Carlo, same crew from last night. Parked 2 blocks over, watching the house. Vincent stepped to the window. Sure enough, a black sedan idled at the curb, engine running. The driver's window rolled down. The same tattooed leader from the diner leaned out, scanning the street. Vincent felt the old cold settle over him, the part of him that had ruled Chicago's shadows for decades. But now it warred with something newer, fiercer, the need to keep these children safe. He stepped outside alone. The wind off the lake was sharper here, carrying the scent of water and coming rain. He walked straight to the sedan, stopping a few feet from the driver's door. The window rolled down fully. The leader smirked. "Nice place, Moretti. Didn't know you did charity work." Vincent's voice stayed even. "You followed us here." "That was a mistake." The man laughed. "We're just looking. New family, new vulnerabilities. You get soft old man people notice." Vincent leaned closer, close enough the man's smirk faltered. "You touch them, you don't get a warning. You get consequences." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You threatening me in broad daylight, I'm telling you the new rules," Vincent said. "Drive away. Don't come back." Silence stretched. Then the man spat on the pavement and rolled the window up. The sedan pulled away slowly, taillights mocking in the afternoon light. Vincent returned inside. Lily waited in the foyer, arms wrapped around herself. "They came again," she said. "Not a question." He knelt. "They're gone now." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Because of you, because of us," he corrected. "I protect what's mine." She stepped forward and hugged him tightly. "I don't want them to hurt Matteo. Or Mama. Or you." Vincent held her close. The love burned hotter, protective, consuming, paternal. He would burn the city down before he let harm reach her. That evening after dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The children had never tasted so fresh. Maria found Vincent in the study. The children were upstairs exploring. She stood in the doorway. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to." She stepped closer. Lily hasn't stopped smiling. Matteo laughed so hard at bath time he got bubbles in his eyes. "I haven't seen them like this. Ever." Vincent looked at her, really looked, and felt another crack in the armor he had worn so long. "They deserve this. You deserve this." Maria's eyes filled. "I was so afraid to hope. Every time things got a little better, something worse came. Bills, sickness, those men. Now, this. It feels like a dream I'm scared to wake from." Vincent stood. "It's not a dream. And if anyone tries to take it away, they'll answer to me." She reached out, touched his arm lightly. "You're giving us more than a house. You're giving us safety, hope, a father." The word landed softly, but it struck Vincent like thunder. Father. To Lily, his blood. To Matteo, the boy who carried Anthony's gift. To this small, brave family he had found at a grave. He covered her hand with his. "I failed once. I won't fail again." Outside, night had fallen. The lake wind whispered against the windows. Inside by the fire, Lily and Mateo played a board game. Ellen had brought out laughter drifting down the hall. Vincent stood at the study window watching the dark street. Another car passed slowly, too slowly. He recognized the silhouette. The threat was not gone. It had only paused. But Vincent felt no fear, only resolve. The remorse still gnawed, sharp, unrelenting, but now it fueled something stronger. A father's vow. A protector's oath. He turned back toward the sound of children laughing. Whatever came next, he would face it. For them. For the family that had healed him without even knowing it. The days blurred into a gentle rhythm that felt almost impossible after so many years of sharp edges and shadowed corners. By the end of the first week in the Lincoln Park house, still October 2025, the children had begun to unfurl like leaves that had been pressed too long between the pages of a forgotten book. Mateo raced through the wide hallways with his stuffed car making engine noises that echoed off the high ceilings. Lily moved more quietly, but her footsteps grew lighter each day. She no longer tiptoed as though afraid the floor might crack beneath her. Vincent watched it all from the edges at first, standing in doorways, leaning against banisters, afraid that too much closeness might frighten them back into the guarded shells they had worn for survival. But Lily sought him out. She appeared beside him during quiet moments, while he read reports at the study desk, while he stood at the kitchen island watching Ellen prepare dinner, while he stared out the tall windows at the lake that glittered like shattered glass. Under the autumn sun, one afternoon she found him in the library, a room lined floor to ceiling with books he had rarely opened. She carried Anthony's old baseball mitt. Vincent had brought it down from the attic the night before, cleaned the leather with careful strokes, oiled it until it gleamed again. The mitt had sat untouched for 6 years. Now it rested on the shelf like an accusation and a promise. Lily held it out to him. "Mama said this was your son's. Anthony's." Vincent took it slowly. The leather was still soft, broken in by a teenager's eager hands. He slipped it onto his left hand. The fit was perfect, familiar, heartbreaking. "Would you teach me?" Lily asked. Her voice was soft, timid, but threaded with a new courage. "How to throw, so I can play with Mateo when he's stronger." Vincent looked down at her thin arms, hollow cheeks still not quite filled out, eyes wide with hope, and felt the familiar tear inside his chest widen into something raw and gaping. This child, his blood asking to learn something his son had loved. The symmetry of it was almost cruel. He nodded. "Come on." They went to the backyard, a wide lawn bordered by tall hedges and a stone wall that kept the city at bay. The grass was still green despite the cooling air. Fallen leaves crunched underfoot like brittle paper. Vincent showed her how to stand, feet shoulder-width, knees bent, glove open. He placed the ball in her small palm, guided her fingers around the seams. "Like this," he said, demonstrating the motion. "Not too hard at first. Just feel it." Lily threw. The ball wobbled, landed short, rolled into the grass. She laughed, a small surprised sound, and ran to retrieve it. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright. "Again," she said. They threw back and forth until the light began to slant golden across the lawn. Each catch, each toss, stitched something new between them. Vincent felt it growing trust attachment, a bond so fierce it frightened him. Every time her small hand met the mitt, every time she smiled after a good throw, the remorse surged anew. He had missed 9 years of this, 9 birthdays, 9 winters of cold she should never have known. That evening, after baths and dinner, roast beef, potatoes, carrots, the children ate with wide-eyed wonder. Vincent sat with Lily on the window seat in her room. The city lights sparkled beyond the glass like distant stars. She leaned against his side, small body warm through her new flannel pajamas. "Vincent," she whispered. "Yes, do you think Anthony would like me?" The question struck like lightning. Vincent closed his eyes briefly. "He would love you," he said hoarsely. He loved kids. He wanted to coach Little League someday. He would have taught you himself. Lily rested her head on his arm. "I wish I could tell him thank you. For the liver. For Mateo." Vincent swallowed hard. "He knows. I think he knows." She was quiet a long time. "Then I'm glad you're my dad." The words landed softly, but they tore through him with violent force. Tears burned behind his eyes, tears he had not shed since the night Anthony died. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, careful, reverent. "I'm glad too," he whispered. "More than you'll ever know." Outside the night deepened, but inside warmth spread slow, steady healing. The threats did not vanish with the move. They changed shape. 2 nights later, Vincent's phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Carlo's voice calm but urgent. "Boss. Same crew. They're parked across the street again. One got out, walked the perimeter, testing the fence." Vincent slipped from the armchair where he had dozed. Sleep still came in fragments, and moved to the window. Sure enough, the black sedan idled under a street lamp exhaust curling in the cold air. A figure in a dark jacket paced near the hedge phone to his ear. Vincent dressed quickly, dark sweater, coat, gloves. He took the back stairs, exited through the kitchen door, and circled the house in silence. The man never heard him approach. Vincent stepped into the pool of lamplight. "You're trespassing." The man spun, hand dropping to his waistband. Recognition hit. He froze. "Moretti." Vincent closed the distance in 3 strides. "You were told to stay away." The man's eyes darted toward the sedan. "We just wanted to talk. See if you're still... you." Vincent's voice dropped low. "What you see is a man who's done playing games. Go back to your boss. Tell him the next time one of you steps on this property, there won't be a conversation." The man swallowed. "You can't protect them forever." Vincent stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse jumping in the man's throat. "Watch me." The man backed away, hands raised. He retreated to the car. The sedan pulled away without another word. Vincent returned inside. The house was still quiet. He checked each room, Lily asleep with one arm flung over the blanket, Matteo curled around his stuffed car, Maria reading in her chair with the lamp low. Safe. For now. The next morning, Lily found him in the kitchen nursing coffee. She climbed onto the stool beside him. "You went outside last night," she said. Not accusing. Observing. Vincent set the mug down. "I did." "Were they here again?" He nodded. She looked down at her hands, nails no longer bitten raw thanks to Ellen's gentle insistence on hand cream. "I'm scared they'll hurt you." "To get to us." Vincent turned her stool so she faced him. "They won't touch any of you. I promise." She searched his face. "But what if they hurt you?" The question pierced him. He cupped her cheek. "Then I'll still keep you safe. That's what fathers do." Lily's eyes filled. She leaned forward and hugged him fiercely. "Don't get hurt. Please." Vincent held her close. The love roared through him, protective, consuming, eternal. He would dismantle his empire piece by piece if it meant keeping that promise. Later that week, he took them to the lakefront path. Matteo rode a new bicycle red with training wheels, laughing as the wind pushed his hair back. Lily walked beside Vincent, hand in his. Maria pushed the stroller they no longer needed but kept for Matteo's occasional tiredness. A black SUV cruised past, slowly, too slowly. Vincent tensed. The window rolled down. A different face this time, older, harder. "Moretti," the man called. Words spreading. "You're going soft. People talk." Vincent stopped. The children froze beside him. He stepped forward, shielding them with his body. "Tell whoever sent you that soft is relative. Touch my family, and you'll see how hard I can still be." The man studied him a long moment. Then the window rose. The SUV accelerated away. Lily gripped Vincent's hand tighter. "They won't stop, will they?" "Not yet," he admitted. "But I will." That night, after the children slept, Vincent stood at the study window. The lake was black glass under the moon. Maria joined him. "They're testing you," she said quietly. "They're testing all of us." She touched his arm. "You don't have to fight alone." Vincent looked at her, really looked, and felt the last remnants of isolation crack away. "I'm not alone anymore." In the quiet house, amid the soft sounds of sleeping children, Vincent felt the deepest shift yet. The remorse remained gnawing, unrelenting, but now it shared space with purpose. With love so fierce it burned away the shadows. He would protect this family. He would heal with them, and whatever darkness came next, he would meet it head-on, for the daughter he had found, for the boy who carried his son's gift, for the woman who had kept hope alive when everything else had failed. The lake wind whispered against the glass. Vincent listened, and for the first time in years he answered with hope instead of rage. The calendar on the kitchen wall turned another page, still October 2025, and the house in Lincoln Park began to feel less like a borrowed dream and more like home. The children's laughter no longer echoed with hesitation. It rang clear and unself-conscious, bouncing off crown moldings and hardwood floors that had once stood silent for too many years. Matteo's cheeks had started to round out the sharp edges of hunger, softening under regular meals and restful nights. Lily's eyes, once shadowed with perpetual wariness, now carried a quiet light that appeared most often when she looked at Vincent. He noticed every change the way a man starved of color notices the first hint of dawn. Each small victory, Matteo eating a full plate without prompting, Lily asking for seconds of Ellen's apple pie, landed like balm on wounds he had carried so long they felt like part of his skeleton. Yet the balm never quite reached the deepest places. The remorse remained a low, constant ache that flared brightest in quiet moments when Lily called him Dad without thinking, when Matteo climbed into his lap to show a drawing of a race car with flames, when Maria offered him coffee with the same careful gratitude she had once used to ration every drop. Vincent spent mornings in the study, quietly restructuring pieces of his world. He met with lawyers in hushed rooms downtown, transferring assets into blind trusts, dissolving certain offshore accounts, redirecting funds from gray area operations toward legitimate channels. He did not speak of it to Maria, not yet, but she sensed the shift. She saw the late-night calls, the way his shoulders relaxed fractionally after certain conversations ended. One crisp afternoon, he drove them to a small community center on the near west side, a brick building with a faded sign that read, Youth Opportunities Initiative. The parking lot was cracked, the playground equipment rusted in places, but children ran across the grass with the same abandon Mateo now showed in the backyard. Vincent parked and turned to the family. I want to show you something. Inside, the center smelled of floor wax and cafeteria lunches. A director in her 40s greeted Vincent by name, quiet, respect in her voice, and led them through hallways lined with children's artwork and bulletin boards announcing after-school programs. They stopped at a large room with mismatched tables, shelves of donated books, and a wall of windows overlooking the play area. This place helps kids like you used to be, Vincent said to Lily and Mateo. Tutoring, meals, safe space after school. But it's struggling. Bills pile up. Programs get cut. Lily looked around slowly. She touched the edge of a table scarred by years of use, the same kind of table she had once eaten cold cereal from, while her mother worked double shifts. Her fingers trembled slightly. Vincent knelt beside her. I'm starting something new, a foundation, in Anthony's name, to help more places like this, to cover medical bills for families like yours, scholarships, counseling, warm homes when winter comes. Mateo's eyes widened. Like a superhero thing, Vincent smiled faintly. More like a promise I should have made sooner. Maria stood a step behind, arms folded, eyes shining. She had not cried in front of the children since the move, but now tears slipped free anyway. Anthony would be proud, she whispered. Vincent looked at her. I hope so. They spent the afternoon there. Lily helped sort donated coats, thick wool ones, fleece-lined, nothing like the thin hoodie she had worn through last winter's blizzards. Mateo played basketball with a group of boys his age, laughing when he missed but beaming when he made a shot. Vincent watched from the sidelines, heart twisting with every small triumph. These were the children the city had forgotten, the ones who shivered through nights, while he sat in heated offices counting profits he no longer needed. That evening back home, Lily found him in the study. She carried a drawing, a simple house with 4 stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. One figure was taller, wearing a coat. Beside him stood a girl with dark hair. This is us, she said shyly, and Anthony's watching from the sky. Vincent took the paper with hands that shook. The lines were childish, imperfect, but they cut deeper than any contract he had ever signed. He taped it to the wall beside his desk, first thing anyone would see upon entering. Thank you, he said, voice rough. Lily hugged him. Thank you for being my dad. The words still unraveled him every time. The threats escalated as the foundation took shape. Word spread quickly through certain circles. Vincent Moretti was pulling back, redirecting money, softening edges. To some it looked like weakness, to others betrayal. Late one afternoon, Vincent drove alone to meet a contact at a quiet cafe near the river. He parked 2 blocks away Habit and walked the rest. Halfway down the street, 3 men stepped from an alley, not the usual crew but associates of Marco, the underboss, who had long chafed under Vincent's authority. They blocked the sidewalk. Boss wants a word, the tallest said. Says you're forgetting who built this city with you. Vincent stopped, hands loose at his sides. Tell Marco I'm not forgetting anything. I'm choosing differently. The man laughed, short, ugly. Choices have prices. Vincent stepped closer. So do threats. A tense silence stretched. One of the men shifted hand, brushing his coat. Vincent's eyes never left the leader's. Walk away, Vincent said quietly. Last chance. The leader stared a moment longer, then jerked his head. They retreated into the alley. Vincent waited until their footsteps faded before continuing to the cafe. Inside, he made the final call. Marco would be summoned. No more games. That night, the house was quiet. Maria found Vincent on the back porch, staring at the dark lake. She wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, small gesture enormous in its intimacy. They're pushing harder, she said. They are. She sat beside him. You don't have to do this alone. Vincent looked at her, really looked, and felt the last barriers dissolve. I know. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. Inside, upstairs, Lily stood at her bedroom window, watching the 2 figures on the porch. She pressed her palm to the glass. Dad's happy, she whispered to the night. And in that moment, the foundation's first check cleared $10,000 to keep the community center's lights on through winter. A small seed. The beginning of something larger. Vincent felt it, the slow turning of his world from darkness toward light. The remorse still burned fierce and unrelenting, but now it fueled creation instead of destruction. He would build something in Anthony's name. Something that honored the gift of life his son had given. Something that ensured no child shivered through another winter while he had the power to prevent it. He looked up at the stars, cold, distant, eternal. And for the first time since the cemetery, he felt his son looking back, not in judgment, in pride. The wind off the lake carried the scent of coming rain. Vincent squeezed Maria's hand. Whatever storm came next, they would face it together. A family forged not by blood alone, but by choice, by gratitude, by the stubborn refusal to let darkness win. The autumn deepened into late October 2025, and the Lincoln Park house carried the scent of wood smoke and cinnamon from the kitchen where Ellen baked pies almost daily now. The foundation, officially named the Anthony Moretti Children's Legacy Fund, had begun to take tangible shape. First checks mailed to the community center. Medical debt relief applications processed for 3 families already. A small scholarship awarded to a high school senior who reminded Vincent too much of the boy Anthony might have become if one night had ended differently. Vincent signed documents with a steady hand, but each signature felt like another layer peeled from the armor he had worn so long it had fused to his skin. Lily and Mateo thrived in ways that still stole his breath. Mateo no longer woke, gasping from nightmares about hospital machines. Instead, he woke asking for pancakes. Lily had started drawing again, not just stick figures, but detailed scenes. The lake at sunset, the backyard with its new swing set. Vincent standing tall beside her with one protective arm around her shoulders. She taped them to the refrigerator, now small, colorful flags of belonging, yet the piece felt fragile like thin ice over deep water. Vincent sensed it in the way shadows lingered longer at the edges of rooms, in the way his phone vibrated with messages from men he trusted less each day. The betrayal came on a Tuesday evening, when the sky hung low and bruised with coming rain. Vincent had stepped out alone routine, he told himself, to meet a longtime associate at a neutral spot downtown, a quiet bar on the Riverwalk where deals had once been sealed over whiskey and low voices. He parked 2 blocks away, walked the river path under sodium lamps that cast long wavering reflections on the black water. Halfway there, his phone buzzed, once short sharp. A text from Carlo Ambush. Feds incoming. Marco sold you out. Get clear. Vincent froze. The words struck like ice water down his spine. Marco, the man who had stood beside him through decades of blood and loyalty, had turned, leaked his location, framed him as an informant to draw federal heat, while rival crews closed in. A double play destroy Vincent's reputation and his freedom in one stroke. He turned back toward the car, steps quick, but measured. Too late. 3 federal agents in plain clothes stepped from behind parked vans, badges flashing under streetlights. Vincent Moretti, you're under arrest. Hands where we can see them. Vincent complied slowly, hands raised, palms out. No resistance, no words. His mind raced, evidence planted, witnesses, bought Marco's fingerprints all over the setup. The agents moved in cuffs, clicking cold around his wrists. Across the street, 2 cars from Marco's crew idled, watching, waiting to see if the takedown stuck or if they needed to finish the job themselves. Vincent was shoved into the back of an unmarked sedan. As it pulled away, he caught a glimpse through the window, one of Marco's men smirking, phone already to his ear, reporting success. The precinct was chaos, fluorescent lights buzzing, phones ringing, officers moving with practiced efficiency. Vincent sat in a holding room, cuffs removed, but 2 agents posted at the door. He asked for his lawyer once. No one answered. Hours passed. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Then the door opened. Not his lawyer. A detective he recognized from old cases, older, now grayer, but still sharp. Moretti, the man said, you've got friends in high places. Or maybe low ones. Someone posted bail already. Cash. No questions. Vincent stood. Who? The detective shrugged. Doesn't matter. You're walking. For now. Outside, rain had begun, cold, steady drumming on the concrete. Carlo waited at the curb in a different car engine running. Vincent slid in without a word. Home, he said. The drive felt endless. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and red. Vincent stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight it ached. Marco's face kept surfacing in his mind. The man he had trusted with his life, with his empire, with secrets no one else knew. The betrayal burned hotter than any wound he had ever taken. When they reached the house, every light was on. Maria stood in the foyer, arms wrapped around herself, face pale. Lily and Mateo sat on the stairs behind her, eyes wide and frightened. Vincent stepped inside, dripping rain onto the rug. Maria moved first, crossing the distance in 3 strides, throwing her arms around him without hesitation. They said on the news, she whispered against his coat. Arrest. Possible charges. We thought. Vincent held her tightly. I'm here. I'm okay. Lily ran down the stairs next, slamming into his legs, burying her face against his thigh. Dad, she sobbed. They said bad men took you away. Vincent knelt, pulling both children into his arms. Mateo clung to his neck, small body shaking. Don't go again, the boy whispered. Please don't go. Vincent's vision blurred. The remorse, already a constant fire, now raged into inferno. He had brought this danger to their door. His past, his choices, his empire had nearly torn them apart before they had even fully become a family. He carried them to the living room, sat on the couch with Lily in his lap, Matteo tucked against his side. Maria sat close, hand resting on his knee. Marco Vincent said quietly, "My second in command. He sold me out. To the feds, to the streets. Thinks he can take everything." Maria's breath caught. Why power? Fear? Maybe both. Vincent looked down at Lily's dark head resting against his chest. But he didn't count on one thing. Lily lifted her face. What Vincent cupped her cheek. "You. All of you. I'm done protecting an empire that hurts people. From now on, I protect what matters." He stood. "I need to end this. Tonight." Maria rose too. "Not alone." Vincent looked at her fierce, steady, unafraid. He nodded once. He made calls, quiet, precise. Men loyal to him, not to Marco. Locations, timelines. No violence promised, only clarity. An hour later, he stepped out into the rain again. Carlo drove. 2 other cars followed at a distance. They met Marco on an empty warehouse lot near the river's same stretch of concrete, where Anthony had died 6 years earlier. Irony Vincent felt like a physical blow. Marco waited under a flickering sodium lamp flanked by 4 men. Rain glistened on his leather coat. Vincent stepped out alone, walked straight to him. "You sold me," Vincent said. No greeting, no preamble. Marco smiled, thin, cold. "You were selling us out. Going soft. Foundation. Family. You forgot who we are." Vincent stopped 5 feet away. "I remembered who I could be." Marco laughed. "Too late. The feds have your name on papers. Your accounts are frozen by morning. You're finished." Vincent looked past him to the river black endless. "You killed Anthony," he said quietly. "Didn't you orchestrated that shootout? To weaken me, to step up?" Marco's smile faltered for the first time. "Careful, old man." Vincent stepped closer. "You took my son. Now you try to take what's left." The rain drummed harder. Marco's men shifted hands near weapons. Then headlights cut through the downpour. Lily's small face pressed to the back window of Maria's car. She had insisted on coming. Maria had refused to stay behind. Vincent saw her, and everything changed. He raised both hands, slow, deliberate. "Stand down," he called to his own men hidden in the shadows. Marco frowned. "What game is this?" "No game," Vincent said. "I'm walking away. The Empire's yours. But if you ever come near my family, if you even breathe in their direction, I will end you. Not with bullets. With every legal string I still hold. Every record. Every witness who'll talk now that I'm not protecting you anymore." Marco stared, then laughed again hollow. "You're bluffing." Vincent turned his back, deliberate insult, and walked toward the car. Behind him, Marco shouted something. Vincent did not stop. He reached the car. Lily flung the door open, threw herself into his arms, soaked, shaking but fierce. "I was scared," she whispered, "but I knew you'd come back." Vincent held her against his chest, rain streaming down his face, rain or tears he could no longer tell. "I'll always come back," he promised. In the car Maria drove. Vincent sat in the back with the children pressed against him. The warehouse lights faded behind them. Marco stood alone in the rain, watching the taillights disappear. Vincent felt the final crack inside him, the last remnant of the old life shattering. The remorse remained deep, eternal, but now it served something greater. He looked down at Lily asleep against his shoulder, small hand clutching his coat. He looked at Matteo, eyes closed in exhausted trust. He looked at Maria in the rearview mirror, eyes meeting his steady, full of quiet love. And in that moment, the Foundation's true purpose crystallized. Not just money, not just programs. Redemption. A life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. A family forged in the rain. A father who had finally learned what protection truly meant. The car turned toward home lights, warm, waiting. Vincent closed his eyes. For the first time in decades, the darkness inside him felt smaller than the light around it. And that, he thought, was enough. Rain continued to fall through the night of October 23rd, 2025, drumming steadily on the slate roof of the Lincoln Park house, like impatient fingers. Inside the fire in the living room, hearth had burned low, casting long shadows across the rugs and the faces of the family gathered there. Vincent sat on the wide leather couch with Lily curled against his side, her small hand clutching the sleeve of his sweater, as though anchoring herself against a tide only she could feel. Matteo slept in Maria's lap, cheek pressed to her shoulder, breathing slow and even. The television murmured low in the background, muted news footage of flashing police lights downtown, but no one watched it. Vincent had not slept. After the warehouse confrontation, after Marco's mocking laughter had faded into the rain, he had driven home in silence while Carlo followed in the second car. The children had been waiting wide-eyed and terrified when he walked through the door, soaked and silent. Lily had run to him first, burying her face in his wet coat, sobbing the same question over and over. "Are you really back? Are you really back?" He had held her until the shaking stopped. Then he had held Matteo, then Maria. Only after they were all safe in the warmth of the house did the full weight of Marco's betrayal settle over him like wet concrete. Now, hours later, the house was quiet except for the rain and the occasional pop of embers in the fireplace. Vincent stared into the flames, jaw tight, mind turning over. The same jagged pieces, Marco's smirk under the sodium lamp, the admission buried in his silence, the cold certainty that the man who had once been his closest lieutenant had orchestrated Anthony's death 6 years earlier, not by pulling the trigger himself, but by feeding the rival crew the exact location, the exact time, the exact weakness in Vincent's defenses that night. The knowledge had been there half-buried for years, whispers Vincent had dismissed as paranoia coincidences. He had refused to connect. Now the truth lay exposed, raw and bleeding, and it tore through him with a violence that left him breathless. Maria shifted, slightly careful not to wake Matteo. She looked at Vincent across the dim room. "You're going after him again," she said. Not a question. Vincent met her eyes. "I have to." Lily stirred against his side. "No," she whispered. "Please don't go out there tonight." Vincent smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "I won't be long. I promise." Lily sat up, small face pale in the firelight. "You always say that, and then bad things happen." The words struck him harder than any accusation Marco could have leveled. Vincent cupped her cheek. I know I've made you afraid. But this ends tonight. Not with blood, with truth. He needs to face what he did to Anthony, to us." Lily's lower lip trembled. "What if he hurts you?" Vincent pulled her close again. "Then you remember what I told you. I'll always come back, because you're my reason now." She clung to him, small body shaking. Maria rose quietly, carried Matteo upstairs to bed, then returned and knelt in front of Lily. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "your dad needs to finish this, so we can all be safe. Really safe." Lily looked between them, eyes huge, frightened, but slowly nodding. "Okay," she whispered. "But come back fast." Vincent kissed the top of her head. "I will." He stood. Maria followed him to the foyer. She helped him into his coat, still damp from earlier, then pressed something into his hand, a small drawing Lily had made that afternoon, folded carefully. A stick-figure family under a bright sun. Vincent slipped it into his inside pocket over his heart. Maria touched his face. "Be careful." He nodded. Then he stepped out into the rain. Carlo waited in the car. No words passed between them. They drove south through the city, past glittering towers, past quiet residential streets, past neighborhoods where streetlights flickered and shadows moved. They stopped at an old warehouse district near the river, the same stretch of cracked concrete where Anthony had fallen. Marco was waiting alone this time, under the same flickering lamp. Rain glistened on his coat on the gun he held loosely at his side. Vincent stepped out. Rain soaked him instantly, but he felt none of it. "You came," Marco said. "Thought you'd run." Vincent stopped 10 feet away. "I'm done running." Marco tilted his head. "You really think you can just walk away?" After everything, Vincent reached into his coat slowly and pulled out the folded drawing. He held it up so Marco could see the childish lines, 4 figures holding hands. "This," Vincent said, "is why I can." Marco laughed short, bitter. "A kid's picture. That's your armor now." Vincent lowered the drawing. "It's my reason. You took my son. You took 6 years of my life. You tried to take this family too." Marco's smile faded. Anthony was in the way. He was soft, like you are now. Vincent felt the rage rise, cold, precise, familiar. But beneath it, something else burned, brighter love. For Lily, for Matteo, for Maria, for the boy whose heart still beat in another child's chest. He took 1 step forward. "You're finished, Marco. The feds have your name now. The crews know you betrayed me. You have nothing left." Marco raised the gun. "Then neither do you." Vincent did not flinch. "Shoot me if you want, but it won't change what you are." Marco's hand trembled just slightly. Rain dripped from the barrel, then headlights cut through the downpour. Maria's car pulled up behind Vincent's. The door opened. Lily stepped out barefoot, coatless, rain instantly plastering her pajamas to her thin frame. Maria reached for her, but the girl slipped free and ran forward. "Dad!" she cried. "Don't!" Vincent turned. "Lily, go back." But she kept running, small feet splashing through puddles until she reached him. She threw her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his coat. "Don't fight him," she sobbed. "Please, Anthony wouldn't want that. Matteo's liver, he gave it so people could live, not so you could die." Vincent froze. The words, simple, childlike, struck deeper than any bullet. He looked down at her, rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears, and felt the violent collision inside him, rage against mercy, old instincts against new love. Marco lowered the gun slowly. "Look at you," he said quietly. "She's got you wrapped around her finger." Vincent lifted Lily into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist, clung tight. "She saved me," Vincent said, "long before tonight." Marco stared at them, rain dripping from his hair gun hanging limp at his side. Something flickered in his eyes, regret perhaps, or simply exhaustion. Vincent spoke softly. "Go. Disappear. I won't chase you. But if you ever come near them again." Marco nodded once. "I know." He backed away slowly, then turned and walked into the shadows. The rain swallowed him. Vincent carried Lily back to the car. Maria waited at the open door, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. She wrapped them both in her arms. Inside the car, Lily shivered violently. Vincent wrapped his coat around her, held her close until the shaking eased. "You came after me," he whispered. "I had to," she said against his chest. "I couldn't lose you too." Vincent closed his eyes. The remorse, deep, eternal, now shared space with something overwhelming gratitude. For this child who had run into danger to save him. For the boy whose gift had kept hope alive. For the woman who had believed in second chances. Maria drove home slowly. The rain eased as they crossed the city line. By the time they pulled into the driveway, the sky had begun to clear, stars faint but visible through thinning clouds. They carried Lily inside. She fell asleep almost instantly on the couch, wrapped in blankets, small hand still clutching Vincent's. He sat beside her, watching her breathe. Maria knelt in front of him. "It's over," she said. Vincent looked at her, really looked, and felt the final fracture inside him heal. Not completely, never completely, but enough. "It's just beginning," he answered. He leaned forward, rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a reason to choose differently." Maria kissed his temple, soft, steady. They sat there in the quiet fire, dying to embers, rain reduced to a gentle patter, while Lily slept between them. Outside, the city lights glittered on wet streets. Inside, a family scarred, mended, unbreakable, waited for morning. And for the first time in decades, Vincent felt the weight of his past lift just enough to let light in. The Anthony Moretti Foundation would grow. Lives would be saved. A father would keep his promise. And love, quiet, fierce, enduring, would prove stronger than any betrayal. The rain stopped. The stars came out fully. Vincent closed his eyes and listened to his daughter breathe. The rain had finally stopped by the morning of October 24th, 2025, leaving the city washed clean and glistening under a pale autumn sun. The Lincoln Park house stood quiet, as though holding its breath after the storm of the previous night. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen, where Ellen moved with gentle purpose, setting out plates of warm oatmeal, sliced apples, and toast spread with honey. The ordinary sounds, spoons against ceramic, soft footsteps on hardwood, felt almost sacred after so much chaos. Vincent sat at the dining table, unshaven eyes shadowed from a sleepless night. His coat still hung damp in the foyer. The drawing Lily had made, the one he had held up in the rain like a shield, now rested unfolded on the table in front of him. 4 stick figures under a bright sun, one taller than the rest. A father, a daughter, a son, a mother, simple lines, profound truth. Lily came downstairs first. She wore the new flannel pajamas Maria had bought her, soft blue with tiny white stars, but her feet were bare toes curling against the cool floor. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Vincent, then ran to him without a word and climbed onto his lap. Her small arms wrapped around his neck, her face pressed into the hollow of his shoulder. "You came back," she whispered, as though confirming a miracle. Vincent held her tightly. "Always," he answered. The single word carried every promise he had ever failed to keep, and every one he would keep now. Matteo appeared next, rubbing sleep from his eyes, stuffed race car tucked under one arm. He climbed onto the chair beside Vincent and leaned against his side without speaking. Maria followed last. She paused at the threshold, watching the 3 of them, father and children, wrapped together, and her eyes filled with quiet tears. No one spoke for a long moment. The silence was not empty. It was full of relief, of gratitude, of the fragile new beginning that had survived the night. Vincent finally lifted his head. "I'm retiring," he said quietly. "Completely. The legitimate businesses, the construction firms, the restaurants stay. Everything else ends today. No more shadows. No more empire. Just this." Maria reached across the table and took his hand. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Lily pulled back just enough to look into his face. "Does that mean you'll be home every night?" Vincent smiled, small, tired, but real. "Every night, and every morning, and every afternoon in between." Matteo's eyes widened. Can we have pancakes tomorrow? Vincent laughed, a low, rusty sound he had almost forgotten he could make. Pancakes every day if you want them. The boy grinned, then grew serious again. He reached out and placed his small hand over Vincent's larger one. Thank you for being my dad too, he said simply. Vincent's throat closed. He covered Mateo's hand with his own. Thank you, he whispered, for carrying my son's gift. For letting me be part of your life. Maria wiped her eyes. We're a family now, she said. Not because of blood, because we chose each other. Vincent looked at each of them, Lily's trusting gaze, Mateo's sleepy smile, Maria's steady strength, and felt the deepest fracture inside him finally knit together. The remorse remained. He would carry Anthony's loss until his last breath, but it no longer ruled him. It guided him. That afternoon they drove to St. Michael's Cemetery. The air was crisp, the ground still damp from the night's rain. Anthony's headstone stood unchanged, polished granite, simple inscription, but today it felt different. Less like a wound, more like a bridge. Vincent knelt first. He placed a single white rose at the base, nothing dramatic, just quiet respect. Lily stepped forward next. She laid her drawing beside the flower, the one of the family under the sun. Mateo added a small toy car. Maria simply rested her hand on the stone for a long moment. Then Lily spoke, voice soft but clear. Thank you, Anthony, for saving Mateo, for bringing us Dad. We're going to make you proud. Vincent felt tears slip free, silent, unashamed. He looked up at the sky, clear now, blue and endless, and whispered, I'm trying, son. I'm trying. They stayed until the sun began to lower, painting the headstones gold. When they rose to leave, Vincent took Lily's hand in one of his, Mateo's in the other. Maria walked beside them, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Back home, Vincent sat in the study and wrote the final letter dissolving the last of his criminal holdings. No fanfare. No announcement. Just quiet closure. The Anthony Moretti Children's Legacy Fund grew steadily. More checks went out, medical bills paid, coats distributed, after-school programs expanded. Each one carried a small note, in memory of Anthony, in hope for every child. Weeks turned into months. The house filled with ordinary miracles, school lunches packed, bedtime stories, read laughter at the dinner table. Lily started music lessons, guitar, because Anthony had loved it. Mateo talked endlessly about becoming a driver someday, a good one who helps people get where they need to go. Vincent watched it all and felt the deepest peace he had ever known. Love, he learned, knows no color of skin, no measure of wealth or poverty. Compassion crosses every divide. A man once feared across a city now found his greatest strength in bedtime hugs and small trusting hands. A child once thin from hunger now grew strong in the certainty that she was seen, wanted, cherished. Knowledge teaches us that true power lies not in control but in surrender to what matters most. Knowledge reminds us that every life carries the potential to heal another. Knowledge shows that redemption is possible even after the darkest nights. Knowledge whispers that second chances are gifts we give ourselves as much as others. Knowledge opens the door to a life lived with open hands instead of clenched fists. Lesson after lesson arrives in quiet moments when a child smiles because she feels safe, when a mother rests without fear, when a father finally forgives himself enough to breathe. Lesson upon lesson builds in the everyday acts of kindness that cost nothing yet change everything. Lesson weaves through every shared meal, every bedtime story, every promise kept. Lesson grows in the heart that once knew only survival and now knows abundance. Lesson blooms where pain once ruled. Education of the soul happens not in classrooms alone but in the patient rebuilding of trust. Education of the heart occurs when we choose mercy over vengeance. Education of character emerges every time we protect the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Education of humanity teaches us that no bank account can buy peace but love freely given returns 1,000-fold. Education of spirit reminds us daily that compassion is the true currency of a meaningful life. To everyone watching this video, may you enjoy good health that carries you through each day, a joyful life filled with moments that make your heart smile, and daily peace that settles deep within your soul. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear a story of hope today. We post engaging videos every day, stories that touch the heart and remind us what truly matters. How did this story make you feel? Does it connect to something real in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one and truly listen to the emotions you pour out from deep within your hearts. Your words mean more than you know. Goodbye for now, and I promise I'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.